Welcome to Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Jaime Agostino. On this podcast, we're joined by financial industry experts to talk about topics, trends, and themes that credit union professionals need to know about. Today, we are joined by Andi Crockett, Product Manager for Vizo Financial and their Payment QSO MyCU services. And today, we're going to talk about ACH Rules. So, Andi, thank you so much for joining me. And as the product manager, you really specialize in the ACH EFT realm, correct?
Yes. Mostly centered around ACH and, of course, instant payments.
Okay, all right. She's got a real passion for this. You're also another proud AAP, but you also, I think you got a new designation. Did you get a new designation?
I am working on it. I'm actually testing next week for my AFPP, so hopefully that will go well.
All
Hopefully
right.
an accredited faster payments professional as well. So
All right. And that's a newer designation
sure
that's
is.
available this year, like this year. So,
Yes, it will be the first time the test is offered in 2025. Yes.
all right. Okay. So before we get into 2025 ACH updates, let's look back at 2024, which was a big year for rule changes and updates. Can you guide us through the ACH rule changes that occurred last year?
Yeah, of course, Jamie. I'd love to. So, as many of you all may know, in 2024, we had several rule updates that took effect on October 1st of 2024. Some of these rule updates do include the expanded use of a return reason code number R17. This rule does allow, but does not require the RDFI to use R17 for suspected fraudulent activity for returns. And it does not have a requirement to use this rule update. However, it is helpful in the recovery of funds that are authorized fraudulently. And of course, for the addenda return record field, there is a requirement of questionable in all caps. So that one is one that credit unions may be using now and have been using for a little bit. But this is just something that we're going to align the rules with so that we can use it for that purpose. The second rule update for 2024 was the expanded use of the ODFI request for return, or RO6. And this rule expands the uses for request for return RO6, and it allows the ODFI to request a return from the RDFI for any reason. Of course, there are some still the requirements that the ODFI does indemnify the RDFI for compliance with the request. And there is a piece to this that will take effect in April of 2025 that does require the RDFI to respond to an ODFI request within 10 banking days of the receipt of the request. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but that is a requirement for 2025.
Okay. All right.
There was a couple more, of course, including the additional funds availability exemptions, timing of the WSUD, and also prompt return of unauthorized debits. So there are quite a number of rule changes that came into effect on October 1st of 2024.
Okay. All right. And are all of those changes then, are they required by Nacha?
So there are a lot of optional rule updates that took effect in 2024. There are some that are requirements, right? One would be the part of the expanded use of ODFI requests for RO6. I just stated that, that will take effect on April 1st of 2025. RDFIs will have the requirement to respond to an ODFI request within 10 banking days of the receipt of the ODFI request. You don't have to use the expanded reasons for the return R6 code, but you do have to make sure that you're responding within that time frame. And then the second one would be to do with the prompt return of unauthorized debits. This was effective of October 1st, 2024. This course would cover the return of unauthorized debits by the opening of the sixth business day following the completion of the receiver's signed written statement of unauthorized debit. So in the industry, we're making sure that we're returning unauthorized debits promptly so that the ODFI knows that those items are fraudulent or vice versa.
So, with these changes, how have these changes impacted the payment operations at credit unions, and has there been impact then to their members?
Yeah, so there's an overarching theme with many of the rule updates in 2024. Most of the rule updates have intentions to improve the recovery of funds and reduce fraud occurrences. So we're seeing a strong uh, pathway into the risk and fraud mitigation tools and ways to combat fraud and bad actors. We are forward looking in the industry, at ways that we can, of course, be creative and be further innovative in the ways that we're combating fraud. And I think that our fraud and bad actors are the most innovative people. So we need to be prepared to rise to that challenge. And this can be done through some of the rule adjustments that we're seeing in 2024 to align with industry trends. And so this will impact members by hopefully saving them from fraudulent activity, but also any potential losses that there might occur because of fraudulent, especially fraudulent authorized credit transfers.
Um, what have we learned, or what important changes have we seen from these implementations in 2024?
So many of the rule updates continuously focus on how we can improve lines of communication between financial institutions to identify fraudulent activity or risks. We know that prevention and early identification of fraudulent activity can assist with losses and mitigate any loss to our members, but also help us to communicate more efficiently and faster with one another. Of course, we want to be able to identify fraud as quickly as possible and make sure that our counterpart in the ACH network knows that there's something going on with that transaction that requires us to either look into that consumer business or entities so that we can make sure that we're understanding what type of transactions that they are trying to initiate or receive.
All right. So we should probably move on to this year, 2025. So will we see many ACH rule changes, updates in 2025? And what will those changes be?
Yeah, so there's not going to be much for 2025, and
Okay.
I think that's good because I suspect many financial institutions will be planning and implementing their risk-based processes and procedures in relation to the rule updates that will be taking effect in 2026. So the only item that we're looking at for 2025 is that April 1st, 2025 requirement to respond to an ODFI's request for a return within that 10 banking days of the receipt of the request. So
Okay.
that's the only one we'll look at.
Okay. All right. Well, since there's not a lot of change then in 2025, well, what can we expect in 2026?
Yeah, so in 2026, there's actually a phased approach taking place with many of the rule updates that are taking place. There are some credit or some rule updates that will affect credit unions and financial institutions starting effective March 20th of 2026. There will be the requirement for fraud monitoring for ODFIs, non-consumer originators, third-party senders, and third-party service providers with annual ACH volume of under 6 million in 2023. So that first phased approach will take place then for that rule update. And then we also will see ACH credit monitoring of RDFIs with receipt volume under 10 million. And that will be 2023 volume. So I'm sorry, over 10 million. I apologize for that. So there are another rule update that this one actually is not a phased approach. This will take place in full on March 20th of 2026 is the new company entry descriptions for both payroll and purchase. So that one is not phased out, and those two will take place on that date. And then we're looking forward at the second phase of the fraud monitoring and ACH credit monitoring. Both of those will take place on June 19th of 2026. So any of the volumes that I described having under that amount, all the financial institutions that fall in that um, outside of that window will have to take place in that June 19th, 2026 date. So if you are not meeting the first phase of the criteria in which you need to implement those rules, then you will be required to do that by June 19th of 2026.
How can credit unions prepare for these future changes and updates, throughout the remainder of this year as well into next year?
Yeah, so it's important to reach out to your vendors to inquire about what they plan to offer to meet the rule requirements. You know, will their processes be integrated? Will there be manual pieces to those new processes that you'll have to implement? And what are, the costs associated with those? If your vendor is not offering or planning to offer a solution, I would of course look at recommendations from your payments association or even a payments attorney if you, have one or have a good contact for guidance. Vizo Financial MICU services, of course, will always be looking for those needs out in the payments industry. And, we will be actively looking at those requirements so that we can look at what solutions we can offer to meet those requirements, which is, of course, great for those credit unions that process their ACH with the corporate.
Okay. Nacha, they're looking for some feedback on certain existing rules. What sort of information are they looking to gather, and how can credit unions provide that feedback?
Yeah, so Nacha does put all of their RFC and RFI, so their request for comment and request for information items out on their website. Of course, there's a deadline to respond to those requests for comment and requests for information. And for the most recent requests for information items, Nacha did have that deadline out there as December 13th of 2024. But of course, if you've missed the date to provide feedback, that is okay. You're still able to look at what requests for information items are out, and they're on Nacha's website, of course, for you to review. You can also look at the requests for comment items, which would have to do with any rules that would go out to ballot. And then, of course, these items are just to ask, right, the industry professionals about trends that Nacha is taking notice to and asking for why or why not this trend is observable, right? So, two of the ones that they had out for 2024 were the 2-a-day ACH credits. So we were looking at eliminating some of the 3 and 4-day or 3 and 2-day ACH credits and looking at just the 2 days. And then we're looking at same-day ACH returns. Of course, we have same-day ACH, and we just see a low volume for same-day ACH returns. So we are looking to see, maybe why that is, and why, the industry has a low volume of same-day ACH returns as well. So that is another one that Nacha had interest in. So hopefully we'll see some good comments and feedback for those as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Andi. Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
No final thoughts. I wish you all luck in getting everything prepped for 2026. Of course, if there's any questions or guidance that you need, always feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help.
All right. And I believe Andi just finished a blog article that is posted to the Vizo Financial website. So if you need those codes and the descriptions in more detail, I believe that's in that blog article. And also, you did a webinar back in January as well. And all of those materials are available on Vizo Financial's website, as well as my Sue Services website. So thank you again for joining me today. And as you heard, I mean, Andi was talking about it, fraud risk, payment risk. Risk is a hot topic in the industry. There's all forms of risk, which is why today's episode is brought to you by Vizo Financial's Risk Management Conference. This 3-day conference is just weeks away, but there is still time to register. This in-person conference will be at the Hotel Hershey in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and we're going to feature thought-provoking sessions, interactive discussions, dynamic speakers, networking opportunities. You're going to earn those CPE credits. And of course, we're going to have chocolate. So all great reasons to attend the conference. But let me tell you about some of the sessions. Here are the session titles. So I'm just trying to pique some interest here. Is your cyber risk management program consistent with your risk appetite? The power of talk in an AI world. This one's my favorite. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Ramp up the human element of security and risk management. There'll also be a tabletop exercise to discuss threats to your credit union. Another session, nudging your team and employees to do what is essential for continual risk management. And then we're going to end the conference with Cannabis Banking 2025, navigating regulations, opportunities, and challenges for financial institutions. These revolving threats, with risk, they're never ending. So join us for this year's Risk Management Conference so your credit union can learn to think about risk creatively, plan strategically, and lead confidently. Learn more at www.vfccu.org. As always, thanks so much for listening and make it a great day.